pre-hospital provider, experienced wilderness medicine provider, your initial impression counts for a lot. My initial impression was she was alert, conscious, slightly confused. She was mobile, she was moving around. She verbalised that she'd only slipped down the last section of the waterfall, not from the top, so I didn't suspect major trauma. The clouds were starting to close in, and for me, we had the option of getting the patient out very, very quickly via the short haul, or potentially spending another night on the mountain. And we opted to get her out fast, so we didn't expose her to the elements for a 7th day.
And I think that's where sometimes you get the problem, the difference between a rescue and your normal kind of pre-hospital is what is the biggest risk. And it is risk versus benefit. More so for the USA kind of guys. There is case law, Barris versus County of Los Angeles, 97, where it's not necessarily inappropriate to transfer a patient before stabilisation. Doesn't really apply to this that much, but the principle is, what is the biggest risk?
We want to move from an area of high risk to an area of lower risk.
Yeah. Or you may go from a prolonged patient assessment to prolonged field care because you're now stuck because we can't get you.
Yeah, and prolonged field care only works if you've got the resources to provide that level of care in that environment.
Question 7, why did you short haul for so long? This is kind of me, I guess. It was about 10, 15 kilometres, which with our velocity never exceed with the doors off is about 6-8 minutes. So it's a long distance, but flight time wasn't so much. Short haul was developed originally by the Swiss Air, Riga. It's used a lot by National Parks Canada exactly for this reason. Where a helicopter hasn't got a hoist, traditionally they used to rappel down and then connect the stretcher and the patient to the rappel ropes. However, it takes a lot of time and power and helicopter problems whilst you're rappelling. So the idea of short haul, we kind of deviated. We did do rappels. Traditionally, short haul, the helicopter is away from the casualty. We connect the people on, short haul them in, you land, strap them up, and we pick you straight out. So we limit the time in the hover. So it wasn't actually a long short haul. It was a long distance, but I know National Parks Canada do them for a lot longer.
Again, it's moving a patient from an area of high risk to an area of lower risk.
Question 8. I've heard that rescue teams can consider the prophylactic use of Diamox if they're going high very quickly above 8,000 feet. Did you consider this?
No.
We did on Akatanango.
Yeah, we did. You can use Diamox for prophylaxis in rescue teams. It's always better to have a gradual approach to acclimatisation with a gradual ascent profile, rest days, hydration, all that kind of things. But the wilderness medicine guidelines do discuss the option of search and rescue personnel or military personnel who are being airlifted into an operation above 3,500 metres with an immediate expectation of physical performance, that they can consider the use of dexamethasone or potentially Diamox. So that would take us up to 10,500 feet. We were only going to 10,400 feet. We've all operated at that altitude before without any physiological problems, and we expected to get up there quick and get out quick. So you can consider prophylaxis for that kind of operation. We did. We ruled it out. It could mask problems. You know, there are benefits, there are risks. We'll talk about that in another podcast when we go through the wilderness medical guidelines. But essentially, it was considered and ruled out. We decided the nature of the operation, the height, and the insertion extraction speed, and our physiological performance previously at higher altitudes, that we didn't need it.
And from the helicopter side, one of the downsides of Diamox and all these kind is increase your urinary output, which is not very good when you're in a helicopter. I'll use the FAA, for example. For aircrew, oxygen's only required over 12,000 feet, and that's normally through a binasal cannula. And the studies of Diamox, etc., are only really done through the military, from Afghan and partly the Air Warrior project, because there's a lot of medications you would normally take, even over the counter, you can't take when you're flying. The FAA do a do not issue, do not fly list, because of one of the side effects might be nausea, vomiting. So there is lists out there specific to wherever you operate. You can take this only if you prove this through a doctor so many days before, and Diamox is not on one of those lists at the minute. And like you say, the cruising altitude of the Bell is 13,000 feet. We don't often fly at that, but we're used to going to those altitudes, but we weren't over 12,000. So for an aviation side, it wasn't a problem. We have taken it in rescue since, but like I say, my biggest problem with it is the increased urinary output.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I'd had to spend the night on the hill, I generally start to get headaches from AMS at around about 5,000 metres, so I think at that altitude I probably wouldn't have, but if I'd been at higher altitude I might have used it to sleep, to improve my sleep. Obviously increases your rate and depth of ventilation, side effects, your urinary output. That's why you need your pee bottle to hand, otherwise you're up and down all night. But again, your previous performance at high altitude doesn't necessarily guarantee your future performance at altitude, so we had the meds for emergency treatment more than anything. If anyone wants more information on that, we'll be doing a podcast on expedition medicine, expedition preparation, high altitude trekking, etc. later on. But in the meantime, the source of information is the Wilderness Medical Society practice guidelines for the prevention and treatment of altitude illness.
Awesome. And then the last one for today, how can I buy your coffee?
Good question. At the moment, we've got piles and piles of it in the store. I'm drinking my way through it. We're trying to find, aside from selling it on the course, we're trying to find the cheapest way of getting it out to America, Europe and Australia. We've had a lot of people ask to buy it, and every cent helps, every cup helps to go back into the medical missions. But at the minute I'm struggling to find a viable cost to distribute it, to send it out. If you want to buy sack loads, that's not a problem, but individual bags. But I'm working on it, is the answer.
Sweet.
Fantastic. Okay, there are a few more questions, but we'll push that into another podcast because I need another coffee. Yep. Your tea's gone cold.
So keep them coming.
Yep. Fire them in on Twitter, Facebook, through the website, on the RedMed podcast.
You name it.
And we'll answer them next time. Equally, if you've got any suggestions or you want to add anything from your experience or you do things slightly differently in your service, let us know and we'll mention it. Okay, that's it from us. Have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Take care.